In this hands-on lab nugget, you and I are going to look at two things. We're going to look at forest and domain functional levels, and we're also going to look at user principal name suffixes. When we create a user in our domain like tuser, it's going to be tuser@nuggetlab.com. But what if you need it to be like tuser@nuggetlabcompany.com? No problem. We can configure those multiple suffixes easily inside our domain. Here's how functional levels work. If you've got this Nugget Lab Forest, and this machine right here is a 2008 box, and let's say this machine right here is a 2012 R2 box, and this machine over here is a Windows Server 2003 box, first of all, that's pathetic. But second of all, you're only going to be able to do a functional level for your forest of the lowest common denominator, and that's 2003. Obviously, you'd want to get rid of that 2003 box just as soon as you can, and then you could go to a functional level for the forest of 2008. Now, inside of a domain, you can actually do a pretty cool trick. So in this forest, we would set a functional level of 2008, but in this domain, where the oldest machine is 2012 R2, we could raise the functional level above that of the forest. Isn't that an interesting rule? You can't go lower than the forest level, but you can go higher than the forest level. So that would be pretty cool. We would have a forest stuck at 2008, but at least for this domain, we could do a functional level of 2012 R2. We're always trying to get the highest functional level for our forest and domain, of course, because we can take advantage of all of the great features of that new version of Windows Server. Now, I exaggerated this story a little bit because it turns out that in Server 2016, we can't even support 2003 functional levels. So what levels do exist for us on the forest and the domain of a 2016 environment? We can go 2008. We can go 2008 R2, we can go 2012, we can go 2012 R2, and of course we can do 2016. We know we set the forest functional level when we create the forest. We set the initial domain functional level when we add domains to that forest. Let me show you in a hands-on lab how you would go and change either the forest functional level or the domain functional level. Get logged into DCNUG1 and DCNUG2, and then on DCNUG1, let's head to the Server Manager. The tool that we're going to need in order to manipulate these functional levels is the Active Directory Domains and Trust console. So go to your Tools menu and go to Active Directory Domains and Trusts. Guess what? We're going to click on the node that is our Active Directory Domains and Trust node. So we're going to go to the very top node, as you might suspect, to manipulate the forest functional level. So I'm going to right click and notice I can raise the forest functional level. Notice we can't lower it. So this is a determination that we're going to make when we're creating the forest on what level we need, and we're going to stick to it. If we choose raise forest functional level and we're at some lower level, we would just choose the higher level from a drop-down list. We are at the highest level possible, so there's no manipulation we could do here, but it's, like I said, just a simple drop-down list. Now, what about changing the functional level of a domain? Well, sure enough, you're going to navigate to that domain that you want to manipulate in the Active Directory Domains and Trust tool. You're going to right-click that domain, and you can raise the domain functional level. Once again, in our lab, we're at the highest possible level, so there's nowhere we could go. Remember, it's worth stating one more time, because if you're interested in certification, this is like a classic exam question that Microsoft could ask you, right? And that is, what can you do as far as these forest and domain functional levels go? Remember, for a domain functional level, you can go higher than the forest level. You cannot go lower. Just keep that on the forefront of your brain when you're thinking about these functional levels. Now, what about the suffix of a user principal name? That's the other forest level and domain level setting that we wanted to look at in this nugget. Let's do this. Let's first make sure we know what we're talking about here. Let's go to the Active Directory Users and Computers, and let's create none other than our TestJ user account. So we'll right-click, we'll choose New, and we'll say User, and this is going to be our TestJ user account, and we're going to give a logon name here of tuser. And look at the suffix. It's at nuggetlab.com, and notice there are no options here. That's what we're going to manipulate. We're going to create additional options here. By the way, we'll finish this user account up by dropping in the password off of our clipboard in the lab. We'll say next, and finish, and we have our user account. Let's go back over to the Domains and Trust tool. Let's right-click our Active Directory Domains and Trust node, and let's go to Properties, because look at here, there is the UPN suffixes area. So we can add alternative UPN suffixes. Maybe I need abc.com, and I go ahead and add that. Maybe I need xyz.com, and we add that. We say OK to this change. Now, when we are inside of Active Directory users and computers, and we are creating a new user account or even manipulating one already created, we'll have these additional suffixes that we can assign. Let's go into the properties of the TestJ user account, for example, go to the Account tab, and notice when we drop down this suffix list now, we have those additional options for naming this account. So in this nugget, we took a look at two aspects of our forest and domain infrastructure, specifically functional levels. We know there's the forest functional level and the domain functional level, and we know how those operate now. And then we also took a look at how easy it is, simple, to configure additional UPN suffixes. I hope you found this nugget informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.